This is the first in a two-part series where we talk about the benefits of Victron Energy lithium batteries. And then in this episode, we'll talk about the SuperPack. It has a built-in battery management system, and we'll go through how it works, as well as stress testing it down to some pretty chilly and hot temperatures. There are lots of discussions about lithium at present, so here's a brief run through of their advantages and disadvantages. The chemistry in the Victron Energy range of lithium batteries is lithium iron phosphate. This is one of the safest lithium available at present. Lithium has a much higher energy density than lead acid. This means more capacity with less weight and less size. Lithium can be discharged to a lower level than lead acid. It's recommended the most of lead acid batteries should only be discharged to 50%, whereas lithium can be regularly discharged to as low as 20%. This means you don't need as many batteries as you would when using lead acid. Lithium batteries allow for a larger charge and discharge current. They have very little voltage drop, so you can run high load items such as a coffee machine or a washing machine without the need for simultaneous charging from an alternator, for example. They can be charged very fast. We recommend a charge rating of up to around 0.5 C. That means you can charge a 100 amp hour battery with 50 amps in 2 hours. Lithium batteries have a much longer lifetime with many more charge cycles. A charge cycle is, for example, if you have a 100 amp hour battery, you discharge 100 amp hours out of it and charge 100 amp hours back in. That is a charge cycle. If you plan an installation and have a cycle life where you discharge the battery down to 20%, you'd get 2,500 cycles. To 30% you'd get 3,000 cycles, and 50% 5,000 cycles. This is substantially more than lead acid, and if you have solar and look after your batteries, they could last for many decades of use. They are much more efficient at around 92%, and unlike lead, don't slow down their charge when they get to 80% full. They don't suffer from sulfation, and lithiums prefer the 20 to 85% state of charge range. To ensure the cells are all balanced correctly, it is recommended that you fully charge lithium batteries once a month, or if you are a heavy user, every 2 weeks. Lithium batteries don't gas and can be used in the same enclosure as inverter chargers and other electronic switchgear. Many installers house their lithium bank inside the cabin of a boat or RV. This is because it usually has a warmer and more controlled temperature. Lithium can be discharged in conditions down to minus 20 degrees Celsius, but they have a charge temperature range of 0 to 45 degrees Celsius for the SuperPack and 5 degrees to 50 degrees Celsius for the Lithium Smart. So inside in a controlled environment is always better. If you do need to install them in, say, the vented engine bay of a boat or in an underslung locker on an RV, you should consider the temperature of the environment. You can add a heating source to keep it warm in the colder months, as well as a venting source so not to get too warm. Lithium batteries do self-warm when they have a high load, however, so if you have a hot coffee first thing in the morning, you may find the draw of power warms the batteries enough to start accepting a charge. There is a much higher initial cost for lithium batteries. Victron Energy of course sells a wide range of batteries including lead-based, but significant research and development has come to the following conclusions. If you look at the cost per cycle, lithium batteries are actually half that of lead acid. There are of course additional benefits too. No need to constantly swap out batteries, reducing installation costs, as well as reduced charging time from an engine with less fuel and less servicing due to the higher charge currents and higher efficiency. The SuperPack are as close to a direct replacement of lead-acid battery as possible. They don't need any additional components and they have an internal relay to keep the battery healthy. The SuperPack batteries can be connected in parallel only. Due to the fact that they have an internal BMS, they cannot be connected in series. Let's put those statistics into practice and start to test the battery to the extreme. At standard room temperature of 24.2 degrees Celsius, we connected the SuperPack to a 12 volt Blue Smart charger and it accepted a charge current of around 11.4 amps. This is a standard domestic freezer. At its max, the temperature inside goes down to a chilly -30 degrees Celsius, so perfect for our extreme low temperature test. The datasheet for the SuperPack indicate we can discharge the battery down to a temperature of -20 degrees Celsius and charge from 0 degrees Celsius, so let's give it a try. After a night's deep freeze, the outer casing of the SuperPack was around -16 degrees. However, the internal core was likely much lower. Using the same Blue Smart charger, we tried to charge the battery, but the internal battery management system had disconnected the charge. You can see that there are 0 charge amps and the voltage is rising because there is nothing to charge. So the BMS has stopped the charge at low temperatures. But let's see if the battery will provide a load. We connected the battery to this training board that includes a Phoenix inverter as well as a smart shunt and a Seba GX and screen. The 230 volt load for this test was a spare camera battery and charger. We can see the Phoenix is providing 69 volt amps with 6.1 amps being drawn from the battery. So the BMS has allowed a load at low temperatures. After leaving the battery to get back up to room temperature, it was time for another extreme test. This is a domestic countertop oven, so let's turn up the heat. We fitted a temperature probe inside the oven to get an accurate temperature and placed the SuperPack on a rack. We also connected tails to the battery so we could test it whilst inside the oven. The datasheet for the SuperPack indicated we can charge the battery up to temperatures of 45 degrees Celsius and discharge at up to 50 degrees Celsius, so let's give it a try. We took it slow so to gradually heat the inner core of the battery, and the temperature increased to 47 degrees and the charge stopped. So the BMS has stopped the charge at high temperature. The next testing point is, will it stop a load at around 50 degrees Celsius? As our load was the testing bench, we needed to regularly take the hot battery out of the oven to test it on the bench. We were able to take the battery up to 67 degrees before the internal BMS stopped the discharge. So the BMS has stopped a load at high temperature. The battery was brought back to normal room temperature again, and we used the training bench as a load. The next test is to see if the SuperPack BMS disables a load when the battery has a low voltage. We were able to take the battery voltage down to approximately 10 volts before the BMS disconnected the load. So the BMS has stopped an undervoltage. Our final test is to see what happens if we try to overcharge the SuperPack. We are using a Blue Smart charger but have manually increased the absorption voltage to 16 volts. The SuperPack battery increased in voltage to around 14.75 volts and stayed there. The BMS was restricting the overvoltage by dissipating it as heat. So the BMS has stopped an overvoltage. all 4 temperature tests and both voltage tests have been successful and followed the datasheet statistics. With a wide range of sizes, the SuperPack batteries are ideal for a simple replacement of, say, lead acid batteries with minimum additional equipment needed. In the next part of this series, we put a lithium smart battery through the same tests to see if the external BMS copes with the low and high temperatures and voltages.